Hello everyone. Welcome to this Antidote class, which is how to communicate for enlightenment and evolution. Now I know that that is a huge topic, and it's bold and it's brazen to say that we can communicate for enlightenment, the time-honored realization of non-duality and infinite compassion, or that we could actually communicate in a way that really brings about evolution, which is a huge deal. It's punctuated leaps in our potentials and capacities. But there is a way to communicate that will lead us to a type of depth that points to that one without a second, that brings us together with each other in a way that's deeper and more profound and unlimited than we can do on our own. And there is a way also to communicate together so that we can tune in to a universal intelligence, what Ralph Waldo Emerson called the Oversoul, what Sri Aurobindo referred to as the descent of the supermind. These are things that mystics and evolutionary thinkers have talked about. Rupert Sheldrake speaks about morphic fields, about that sense that we can access and tune into a level of collective knowledge and understanding that's beyond our individual capabilities. So my own experience, I found that, believe it or not, extraordinary leaps and releases of evolutionary energy and an upsurge of awakened mind can emerge when we follow very simple principles, which I'm going to teach you in this class. Now, when we think about getting together with other people and speaking about something together, most of us shrink back. Most of us go, do I really have to do that kind of group process? Do I really have to sit down with everyone? Inevitably, there's going to be one person who loves to hear the sound of their own voice. There's going to be another person who stands back with their arms folded and just criticizes everything and everyone silently. And then there are going to be everyone else in between who are just trying to get a point in and show that they're there and pretend that they're smart and flirt with the person they really like, and all those other dynamics that come into play when groups come together. And they can be spiritual groups, they can be yoga groups in the cafe after class, they can be boardroom meetings, they can be government task forces. The fundamentals of human communication haven't evolved that much in recent times. Our intelligence has far outstripped our capacities to touch into something deeper and something more sacred together. So what I want to talk about today is I want to talk about 10 easy, deceptively easy steps, 10 big ideas that if you put into practice, and if you hold these 10 steps in your own being and start to communicate in that way with others and start to transmit this way of speaking together with others, you will find yourself communicating in ways that lead to awakened understanding and enlightened mind and point to our evolutionary potential. And if you're really focused and really dedicated, you might find yourself in the midst of a powerful collective upsurge, which is what these evolutionary thinkers like Aurobindo spoke about when they talked about the release of the psychic being, the release of our higher order humanity. So they're big terms, big ideas, but we can do it. And I've done it, and I want to show you how. So the first thing is we have to want to go somewhere new. We have to be committed to going beyond what we already know. And I don't mean that type of step when you enter a new job, when you decide to go to college for a higher degree, that you're going to learn something new. We want to take a step beyond where we've been before. And in order to do that, we have to hold everything we know loosely. We have to be not concerned with how we're going to look. We have to be not concerned with the need to overcome our insecurities and prove our point. We just have to be interested. So the unknown really is the unknown. It's not just something beyond what we know. It's not just something beyond the furthest star. It's not, the unknown is something that hasn't yet emerged. Or it's that unknown which lies at the root of spiritual awakening. That which can never be known, can never be held, can never be objectified. That's always a mystery. In Christianity, they speak of the Trinity, and I'm not that familiar with it, but what I like is that they speak about the Holy Ghost, because the Holy Ghost is that which can never be known by the mind. It can never be grasped, can never be held, can never be objectified, can never be contained. So we want to be interested in the nature of that, that which we can never know, that which we can never see, that which we can never touch. So that's principle number one. It's easy, but we really have to do it. And the way we do it is we allow ourselves to trust, for just a little bit, to trust our own spiritual heart, to trust our own interest, to trust our own desire to go beyond the known. We may think that our desire isn't as great as other people's desires. We may think that we're not as committed as others, but all it takes is a tiny speck of faith, a tiny sense that we have that innate human capacity for love of the mystery, and let ourselves go into that. And it's amazing what you'll find on the other side. So that's the big idea number one. Care about what you don't know more than what you know. Now listen deeply is the second aspect. We want to listen in a way where we listen with the depth of our being. It's like listening from the inside out. We usually listen from our ears, and we hear what people say, and it bounces off what we already know. We understand what the words mean. We have some idea about who they are, about where they're coming from, about what they're pointing to. But there's a way of listening where we're opening ourselves up. It's like opening up an inner ear, and we're listening very deeply. And what we're listening for, we don't quite know. We don't know already what someone's going to say. We don't know already where it's coming from. We don't know already what it's pointing to, and we don't know already what that person's contribution can catalyze in this shared space that we're in together. So we want to listen. And that listening takes a quality of being, and it takes a posture of the self. And that brings us to the third big idea. The third big idea is a phrase that Sheryl Sandberg's made very popular, which is lean in. So we want to lean in. Now this leaning in is leaning in to that which we don't know. Leaning in with all of our being. You know, when you can't quite hear someone and you really want to hear what they have to say, you lean in. And when you lean in like that, metaphorically and even physically, you put yourself in a posture where you're anticipating something positive. You're anticipating something useful. You're listening for something that's coming next that you couldn't already predict. You're desiring to hear that echo of what's deeper, that echo of what's more true, that echo that's coming from somewhere so authentic you can't quite locate it. So that's what leaning in means. It's leaning in with our whole being. It means I'm present, I'm here, I'm with you, but I'm more with this consciousness we're creating together. I'm aware that The more I open the pores of my being, the more I listen in this way, the more I lean in with the entirety of myself, then the more magic can happen. When we're holding ourselves a little bit apart, kind of judging everything that's happening, criticizing it before it goes anywhere, ready to shoot down anything that's not fully expressed or not expressed to our liking, or assuming that there's some kind of limitation to what's being said, we will never find that peace that takes us to the unknown. So we want to lean in. And as we lean in, we come to the fourth big idea, which again is very simple. But we want to listen for where someone's coming from. And that can be taken two different ways. I don't mean that you're listening with that judging mind and suspicious mind and wondering if there's an ulterior motive, or if they're really just trying to get on top of the conversation, or if they're really trying to avoid exposing what they really think or feel, or some deeper insight. We want to listen to where someone's coming from, assuming that we're all here for the same thing, assuming that we're here to explore and communicate in a way that's going to move ourselves, this little microculture we're creating, and through that microculture, as an example, the whole culture. So we want to move forward. We want to open ourselves. We want to experience new qualities of relatedness between us. And we want those qualities of positivity and depth and sensitivity to stick. So we want to listen to where someone's coming from. And we want to listen for that echo of depth, that echo of the absolute, that echo of a part of ourselves that's the same as that mysterious spiritual center of someone else. Because if you go deep enough into the exploration of consciousness, you find there really is only one consciousness. We're like outlines in this one, sheet of consciousness. So we want to listen for that. And sometimes what will happen is we'll be able to pick out that sense of depth from another person when they're not even aware of it themselves. And then we'll be able to respond to the one thing they say, the one phrase they say that's coming from that more authentic place. And we'll be able to bring that to light. And they'll say, oh my God, I didn't realize that was there. They'll gain confidence in their own depth through your reflection, through your listening, through your sensitivity, and through your picking up on what they've contributed. That's really of value, and it's of value because it's authentic. It's deeply authentic. It's deeply forward-looking. So listening deeply is an art, and it's a skill, and we don't practice it very much. So I really encourage you, as you're going about your meetings and your times with friends and your times with loved ones, pay attention to how you're listening. This is an easy one to practice. It's an easy one to start shifting your posture. And you're going to start experiencing all kinds of things that you didn't know were there. And you're going to start getting to know people afresh. And you're going to get to know the better side of them. And as you respond to the better side of them, they will respond to you from that better side. So the world's going to become a much better place. And our mutual relatedness is going to be much more satisfying. So the next very simple practice of this communication, this type of deep dialogue, is to follow a thread. And what we want to do is take that thread that's been started, we're going somewhere, and bring it to the next step. So you imagine if you're sitting in a circle. Often we don't necessarily sit in a circle. Usually we're virtual, so we're on the phone somewhere around the world with the other people we're discussing with. But imagine that you're in a circle, and in the middle of that circle is a tapestry. And like the fairy tales of old, there's a magic needle and a magic thread. And that magic needle has its own direction and its own energy. And it's stitching its way around the circle, and the thread is changing color, and the pattern is changing, the texture is changing. But the needle has a directedness. And our job as participants in this co-creative process is to watch where that pattern is going, to contribute to that thread, and to follow it so that we're always contributing one more thing that's going to take this inquiry further and deeper. You might think that this means that you can only follow the single thing that's been said. There might be something from left field that is a different angle, a different track, a different tact, but is clearly the next step. So you can't be rigid about this. But again, it takes a real unlearning to learn how to follow the thread of the conversation in a way that's going to lead it somewhere new. So we want to go back to the first big idea, which is to be interested in what's new. So somebody might say something, and that sparks kind of 10 different things that you already know about. And it's related to this, and it's related to that, it's related to this history bit, it's related to that cultural insight, it's related to that movie you saw, it's related to that food that you like. It's related to so many different things. Our minds work like popcorn poppers. And any one contribution from someone can spark 10 different directions. But we only want to follow what that person said with what is going to take the conversation deeper and further and somewhere new. And sometimes what in practice that feels like is biting back the first 10 things that come to mind. Not just the first one or two, but the first 10 things that come to mind. And as you're listening deeply and as you're leaning in, you're going to start to hear something else, maybe a smaller voice from you. And that smaller voice is going to have something that seems perhaps unbearably simple and not much. But that one thing that you contribute that seems to be, in fact, the most authentic and fresh thing that you can say at that particular moment will be the very building block that the conversation needs in order to go somewhere particular, somewhere new. Now, when you get a group of people who are all practicing in this way, the kind of dialogue you can have starts to take on an effervescence. It's really a different order of inquiry. You're going to feel a sense of joy. You're going to feel a sense of meaning. You're going to feel a sense of enlivenment. You're going to feel this sense of lightness of being and energy and awakeness. You're going to start to feel it not just intellectually and cognitively, but you're going to feel it emotionally and experientially. And you're going to feel it in the inner parts of your being. You're going to feel refreshed. You're going to feel like you've just, drunk this elixir or tonic that rejuvenated you from the inside out. That's what this type of inquiry does. So as we're following a thread, and as we're contributing the next step, we're also very consciously stepping into the unknown. So this is the next building block. This is the next big idea. We want to step into the unknown. We want to build towards something. We want to move the conversation forward. Now this gets a little bit subtle, because when we're talking about conscious evolution, conscious communication, conscious awakening, we are using our being to evolve. So how do you do that without using your egoic, negative, psyche and personality tendencies that everyone's told you to chill out on? So how do you contribute and participate in a way that really uses the best of your being and yourself? How is it that you can take that and move the conversation forward consciously. So in part, it's by practicing discipline and renunciation. So we practice all of the pieces that we've spoken about. And as we practice those, then we start to trust in our own interest and in our own curiosity and in our own desire to make that field of consciousness the most porous it can be for new possibility. So we start to direct. We start to listen to what to respond to. We start to dismiss the ideas that come to mind that are irrelevant. And we start to consciously move the dialogue forward. And as you practice this, what you might find is that you're the most sensitive to these aspects of conscious communication. You're the most sensitive among the group that you're with. So the weight of responsibility is going to be on you to move it forward. And that weight is a beautiful weight. So we can't take it to mean something about us and hold ourselves above other people. But what it means is that we have this burden of discipline and renunciation, which is what it takes to consciously create inquiry that goes deep. Now, what's going to help us do that without getting really tied up in knots and feeling like we're always second guessing ourselves because we're worried about not being overbearing, and we're worried about not being passive, and we're worried about listening, and we're worried about participating, and we're worried about all these things, so we forget where we're trying to go. So the antidote to that is to be interested in what's happening between us. We become interested in the space between and in the quality between us. And that has a life and a mystery of its own. You start to become aware of a palpable field of consciousness between us. So you start to become aware of the quality of that consciousness. You start to become aware of its sponginess, its heat, or its coolness. Communication has, it's almost like it has a tactile feel to it. And there is no one right feel. We're going to be in different situations. We're going to be talking about different things. And every type of communication that is opening to new discovery is going to have a different feel. But as we become interested in that, as we lean into that, then we'll start to get so fascinated by the texture and feel and temperature and color of this field of communication between us, the metaphors of collective consciousness, that's going to take us right out of ourselves. And we won't need to worry about second guessing ourselves. We won't need to worry about controlling our desire to, dominate and show how smart we are. We won't need to work in that way. What we'll need to work from, and what we'll be able to work from, is just our fascination with that which we can't really know. And that's going to be the perfect antidote. So what that looks like is it takes us to the 9th big idea, which is having one eye in and one eye out. So it's one eye on ourselves, one eye on our inner reactions and reactiveness, so we become conscious, and one eye out on what's happening. And again, this happens all at once. It's not a split where one eye in and then one eye out, and you're going back and forth, and you're tying yourself up in knots. But what we're doing is we're practicing a very conscious awareness of ourself and our tendencies, our personality, proclivities that we all have, our reactiveness. There's certain people who push our buttons. Objectively, what they're saying is fine, but they just push our buttons. We don't want to react to that, but we want to be aware. We want to take stock of ourselves, so we want to know those things about ourselves. There's certain people we always listen to. What they're saying might not be that great, but we always listen to them because who knows, maybe we had some karmic connection in a past life. There could be infinite reasons why we react to people the way we do. So we want to keep one eye in, notice all those non-objective, non-useful, irrelevant responses, and just ignore them. Just let them be. They'll come and they'll go. And we want one eye out so that we're always aware of the shared field between us. We're aware of how things are going. We're aware when they're really lifting off. And we care about that. We pay attention to that updraft, that sense that something is bubbling. And we protect it. We protect that updraft, like when you're camping and you get a fire going and it's windy and the rain's coming and you really want to get that fire going. So you protect it. And it's the same in this communication. You protect that. You protect that by how you participate. You protect that by how you encourage others to respond. You protect that by your sense of the shared field between all of us. So that's one eye in and one eye out. And finally, the thing that will keep this going more than anything else is let go of the results. Hands off. So there's no great ownership. If something unbelievably miraculous explodes and you feel like, you've gone into the zone, you're just experiencing something beyond what anybody's ever experienced before, because that's what this kind of emergence of consciousness feels like, because it is extraordinary. Let go. Because there are so many subtle factors that enable that to happen. And we can be aware of some things that we do that contribute to that. But we can't take ownership. Because consciousness is also mysterious, and it's a result of a collective participation. And then again, the result of things that are happening that we don't even have any idea about. When collective intelligence first started to be talked about with Juanita Brown's conversation cafes and Phil Jackson's work, with the basketball, it was happening non-locally in all kinds of different situations and under very different auspices. Nobody knows exactly why, but this phenomena of groups being able to converse and come together and be in the flow seemed to be proliferating. So there are a lot of different factors. Rupert Sheldrake talks a lot about non-local morphic fields, about how influenced we are by each other. So we can't take credit for any of it. We can learn from what we do, and we can develop these skills over and over again, but we let it go. And also we let go because next time is going to be different. We'll never be able to recreate that. And if we hold on to it, we'll keep trying to recreate what we remember, but what we remember will never be the thing itself. So we want to let it go. And we want to another reason why we let it go is because it's similar to giving out all of the energy and goodness that comes from spiritual updraft and that comes from this type of working with consciousness in a way that can facilitate the emergence of our higher capacities. And when we practice letting that go, it becomes like the traditional Buddhist wish-fulfilling gem. We let it go from our hands, and our hands mysteriously fill up with jewels yet again. We let go of the jewels and they fill up. And that's what the wish-fulfilling gem does. So I hope this has given you some idea of how to practice the art of communication in a way that leads to enlightenment and evolution. And I look forward to feeling and experiencing the results of countless collective encounters that lead to a different order of relatedness between all of us.